Hello, everyone, and welcome to the How Do I Knit That podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Dawn of Sarah Dawn's Designs, and this 11th episode of the How Do I Knit That podcast will be talking about accessibility for disabled people in the realm of the fiber arts, focusing specifically on the recent events on Ravelry.com. So, broadly, what is this podcast all about? Well, this podcast came about because I hear so many people saying, "Oh, I could never knit that. Oh, I could never make that." And I think that's really sad. I'm a firm believer in the idea that anyone can knit or crochet or quilt or whatever your chosen art is. All it takes is some knowledge, the right tools, the right techniques, and the willingness to get a little ingenious. If you're looking for the previous podcast episodes, you can find them on my Patreon, which I will link to in the video description, or in a YouTube playlist, which I will also link to in the video description. So, accessibility. Let's start with, what is accessibility? Accessibility is, broadly speaking, how accessible your thing is for people with disabilities. When folks think of this, they often think of things like wheelchair ramps, braille sign language, and other such things. But accessibility is actually quite a bit more. It means, first, yes, building an environment, both digital and physical one, where disabled people are able to access all the same things as able-bodied folks. It also means working with the disabled community to make sure that their needs are met by your space, just like everyone else's. Sadly, disability is still often overlooked when it comes to inclusion. In many jurisdictions, disabled people cannot marry, cannot choose their own living setups, and are still discriminated against when it comes to employment. Indeed, 70% of disabled people are unemployed or underemployed in the United States. There are many jurisdictions, including the US and Canada, where it is legal to pay disabled people far less than minimum wage, in some cases as little as 20 cents an hour. To see this in a larger picture, just consider your local high street. How many stops have steps but no wheelchair ramp, and/or no accessible bathroom? Think about if your favorite Netflix show has closed captioning or described video. You might be surprised at what you find. Ableism, discrimination against people with disabilities, is, like many isms, embedded quite deeply in societal norms, and we, as a society, are only now starting to unpack it. What does this look like in the fiber world? Well, I'll pull from my own experiences as a disabled knit and crochet designer to start. There was a festival where I asked about an elevator, and I saw all their faces go white. I ended up having to scoot up the steps on my butt to get to both the food and the designer's fashion show, because accessibility had not been a consideration of this festival. However, to illustrate ableism quite clearly, this festival has kept the same inaccessible location despite that experience. They are now choosing to be inaccessible, and this is very common because it's, quote, just a few people, unquote. The location is convenient for the organizers and costs less than an accessible location, so my needs, and the needs of other disabled attendees, are placed behind cost and convenience, which is another common occurrence for disabled people. We are commonly told, quote, there's no money for that, unquote, or that we're, quote, asking for too much, unquote. When in reality, we're asking for the same level of access that the able-bodied population already has. Indeed, many jurisdictions do in fact have laws for assuring that the disabled people have access. The ADA in the US, the AODA here in the province of Ontario, and the Equity Act in the UK. But sadly, those laws are often ill-enforced or ill-used. What else does this mean within the fiber world? Well, it means many festivals I have no hope of attending, because as someone who cannot drive due to a disability, it means I am reliant on public transit and rideshares. However, services like Uber are usually inaccessible to wheelchair users, and multiple experiences of harassment over my cane have left me incredibly uncomfortable using rideshare services. So, that beautiful festival in a rural area? Well, I definitely can't go, or I have to risk my safety to do so. And many festivals are not navigable in a wheelchair, as, assuming the venue itself has wheelchair access, the stalls are often too close together to navigate safely, and good luck actually getting the cash register to buy a thing. Sure, I could just hand over my credit card to a stranger and have them pay for me. This has been in fact suggested to me many times. But would you be comfortable with that? Probably not, so why should I? I could cite many more experiences from both myself and other disabled yarn and fiber people. I have many stories from the disabled fiber community, and it really does boil down to the fact that disabled folks are often an afterthought. Now, very rarely is this direct malice. I've only ever gotten death threats once from within the fiber community, from someone who believed that murdering me would remove a, quote, drain on society, unquote. The fact that other people in the room did not speak up was also frightening, but I choose to believe they were all just completely shocked at the open murder threat against the woman in the wheelchair. And that, to be fair, is an extreme. But it's an extreme that does happen. Ableism is a combination of many things, but an easy one to point to is the fact that disability representation is, well, rather pathetic. Somewhere on the order of 1% of media shows disabled folks in a positive way, and most of those are usually able-bodied actors playing disabled roles. Most venues, organizations, and groups probably don't have someone even thinking about disability. I mean, have you ever seen a knitting or crochet magazine with a visibly disabled model on its pages? But people with disabilities are actually the world's largest minority, with approximately 1 in 4 people having a disability at any given time. So, it's not for lack of people. It's for a lack of thought and awareness. But what this means is that they don't know their shop or their website is inaccessible until someone points it out. They don't think about the fact there are no visibly disabled models in their magazine line until someone points it out. How they respond to that is what shows if they're going to be openly ableist or not. And for a striking example of this in action, I invite you to look at the website Ravelry.com. Well, no, actually, don't go look at it, as it is, at the time of this recording, a trigger for photosensitive seizures and other serious health conditions. When Ravelry rolled out its rebrand and redesign mid-June 2020, it was met with a major outcry. Many people did not like the new look. But buried in there was a bunch of serious health concerns: migraines, vertigo, and most terrifyingly, retinal bleeds and seizures. Now, a few points before I go further. Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, have a whole section on seizures and photosensitivity, which Ravelry obviously ignored in their initial rollout. Indeed, the initial website had many animations, which places it in clear violation of the WCAG. Quote, "Motion animation triggered by interaction can be disabled unless the animation is essential to the functionality or the information being conveyed." End quote. That was untrue for Ravelry. Ravelry's animations were unnecessary and could not be disabled. Indeed, at the time of this recording, some elements of their login page are still, in fact, animated with no option to disable. So, you can say the Ravelry team is not professional coders, and as such would not know of web accessibility. And that's a reasonable thing to say, except in choosing to take on a redesign for a business with 9 million members, they had to endeavor to approach this website redesign with a modicum of professional quality, even if they were in fact doing it themselves. And to put it bluntly, they did not. In addition, Ravelry's byline is that they are an inclusive website. You would think that an inclusive business would look to consider the world's largest minority, folks with disabilities, in their website designs. It looks like this was actually very far from the truth. In addition to a complete ignorance of web accessibility, the Ravelry team has shown no willingness to educate themselves as to why this is so important. At the time of this recording, there have been 10 seizures and 1 retinal bleed reported due to their website, plus hundreds of reports of migraines, vertigo, headaches, visual disturbances, and more. Yet, they have refused to actually revert the site to the previous build. It is being speculated that they can't revert the site, which just speaks to how poorly this website redesign was handled. In addition, much of the new Ravelry has not been coded to function with screen reading software for folks who are blind or visually impaired. But, instead of addressing the harm, they are dismissing the health concerns brought forward by many disabled people, banning users from their forums, moderating comments out of existence on Facebook and Instagram, and even harassing disabled people who are speaking out on social media. They have stated that they regret the site is, quote, "not usable by a small number of people," unquote, and that most complaints are people who just don't like change. This is a complete dismissal of disabled people's concerns. Now, you may have heard that Ravelry is offering the option to revert to classic Ravelry, but this option was only put in place after a string of complaints 3 days after the first set of seizures were reported. And you must still log in via the new Ravelry login screen, which is still a seizure risk. Also, it has come to light that classic Ravelry is not a true reversion, but a reskin of new Ravelry, which means that it is also causing issues for some folks, myself included. And, in a further blow, they initially launched requests for feedback on Ravelry. You know, the site that many people can't access? They shut down requests for accessibility or simply ignored them, and treated disabled using appallingly, ignoring personal attacks from other members, and blocking the voices that did not agree with their new site. It is now over 4 weeks from launch at the time of this recording, and they still have not corrected the glaring accessibility oversights, nor does it seem like they intend to. Their communication has been almost non-existent, except to congratulate themselves upon a new design, a design that is unusable for many disabled folks. This blatant disregard for disabled folks is ableism at its peak, The idea that disabled people can't or wouldn't be involved in the community, or disabled folks don't come under the umbrella of inclusion, is, honestly, not shocking to the disabled community. But wait, if the coding errors were that bad, how could they have fixed them, you ask? Well, if they had responded to the reports of seizures and health concerns more rapidly, showing more compassion rather than minimizing the complaints. In addition, if they did in fact have to take the site offline for a couple days to do some bare-bones fixing, I suspect that if they had said, hey, we messed up, we have to do some recoding so we don't run the risk of killing anyone, site's gonna be down for a while while we fix and migrate it. Remember folks, seizures can be lethal. Most of the community would have applauded their care. After all, this was a community that was willing to ban support of Trump and take the resulting loss of membership. While some would have said, how dare you shut down the site, it's not a problem. Again, there's the devaluing of disabled experiences. I would have thought that Ravelry, a supposedly inclusive website, would be happy to see those who are that prejudiced towards people with disabilities also leave. Instead, Ravelry is catering to the very concept of ableism, allowing attacks on disabled folks voicing their experiences, and banning/blocking disabled voices who are speaking to the problem. They would rather leave a site up that is causing serious health issues than take it down and fix the problem properly. That is, they would rather risk disabled lives than take the site down for a time. We are, to borrow a commonly used phrase, not worth the inconvenience. Now, other organizations are beginning to get involved. The Epilepsy Foundation has been requesting feedback and has reached out to Ravelry to alert them to the reports and ask them to take seriously the concerns of people with epilepsy. So far, there has been no change on Ravelry's stance. With all that depressing news, though, there are a few rays of hope. Many designers are seeking out other shops and storefronts, pulling their advertising, and generally making it known this is not acceptable. So, if you have a favorite designer, make a point of buying from them off Ravelry. And yes, buying off Ravelry is less convenient, but disabled crafters can't use Ravelry anyway, so it's a good way to be in solidarity with the disabled crafters who've been forced off Ravelry. And on that note, I've migrated all my patterns to Etsy. Yes, Etsy has problems with the platform, but it's what I could set up in a hurry. And I'm also in the process of migrating to PayHip, as well as setting up my own website. What else can you do? Believe the disabled folks who are speaking up. Many of us are being told that we're making this up, that it can't be as bad as we're saying, or that we're just whining about a free website. Trust me, I'm not making up disorientation that was so bad I couldn't keep my balance, or animations that almost had me vomiting on my computer keyboard. Shut this stuff down when you hear it, and uplift the disabled crafters who are saying this stuff. In addition, learn about web accessibility best practices and practice them, even if it's just your own social media account. And another way to help is start becoming an advocate for better accessibility, not just on Ravelry, but everywhere. Your local yarn shop doesn't have a wheelchair ramp? Make some questions to why not. An online website doesn't have a dark mode? Ask them why not. A designer you love publishes a digital ebook? Ask if it's compatible with screen reading technology. Having able-bodied voices amplifying digital and physical accessibility for those who need it really helps. And remember, accessibility benefits everyone. The curb cuts that are now common on most sidewalk edges used by folks with strollers, buggy carts, and wagons, they're the direct result of activism by disabled folks. And disabled folks were originally told by city planners that such a thing was completely unfeasible. The speech-to-text software that forms the basis of technology like Siri and Alexa, that was started as accessibility tools for people with disabilities, enabling them to control their computers by voice, and was again originally claimed to be too much effort for too little gain. So even if you think it doesn't matter for you, I'll say it again, accessibility benefits everyone. And with that important reminder, I think that just about wraps up the podcast. A huge thanks to my patrons who supported this podcast. You folks can submit an MP3 audio or MP4 video file of your questions for the podcast over on Patreon. The podcast archive is available on my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/SarahDawnsDesigns, and future episodes will be available here on YouTube as well. Patrons usually get access on the second Wednesday of every other month, and the podcast is available to the public a week after that, so the third Wednesday of every other month. Well, that's it for episode 11. Stay tuned in September 2020 for the next episode, and thank you once again for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, you can in fact knit that. Happy crafting!